in this new year, we're starting a new series based on vocations. Who can tell me what a vocation is?
What you're called to do in life?
What you're called to do in life, yeah. So it is bigger than an occupation. It's more a part of your identity, and it's the path we choose to help us become saints. So over the course of the next few weeks, we are going to cover the church's permanent vocations, which are matrimony, religious life, and the priesthood. And since vocations are our path to sainthood, we will be going deeper into the lives of some of the saints as well. So tonight, I am going to share about marriage. Marriage is why we are gathered here today.
Whoa.
The church teaches us that holy matrimony is a covenant between a man and a woman for the whole of life. This covenant is a contract, basically, between God and the couple. And in joining together, the couple becomes one flesh, one spirit. So in choosing this vocation, you give up your life as just you. The two come together of their own free will. They promise to give their total selves to their spouse. They promise to be faithful to each other and to be fruitful in the marriage, meaning they're open to having children. And I want to focus really, though, on the second part, the total self-giving of oneself to their spouse. When you give yourself as a gift to someone, you both share immense love for each other. But what is love? I know many of us think that love is a feeling you get. And love does stem from feelings, but true love is more than this. It is sacrifice. It is an action. It's what you do for the other person. And it's willing the good of the other person, even when it's hard. So you see, the goal of marriage is really to get your spouse to heaven, and to help each other become saints. How many of you have heard of Saint Gianna? So she's actually a saint of the 20th century. She was born in 1922 in Italy, and she truly understood the meaning of love. She was a pediatrician, and she'd do anything to help her patients. She helped start a group in her community called Catholic Action that was focused on prayer, service, and sacrifice. And at Mass, she met Pietromola, and after getting to know each other, they would eventually marry. And during their engagement, Pietro traveled for work, so they actually exchanged, this is like how they are kind of famous, they exchanged a lot of letters, so they could share spiritual togetherness, even though they were miles apart. So together they had 3 children, and Gianna really loved being a mother and a wife. And although she still led a really busy life as a doctor, she found it very important to be a good wife and a good mother. And she found great joy in teaching her children about the faith and how to live it. So Gianna, actually later in life, she became pregnant again with their 4th child, but there were really big complications with the pregnancy. And her doctors gave her the option to abort her baby. But Gianna, being Catholic, decided against this. And she gave the ultimate sacrifice, as Jesus did, and laid down her own life for her child. And she willingly died in childbirth so that her baby could live. And this is what it means to give a total gift of self. Now, most of us probably won't face a death that is so extreme, but it's important to learn what love means from Saint Gianna. Marriage is sacrifice. Love is sacrifice. My husband Ethan and we've been married about 1.5 years. And while, yes, we do have these feelings of happily ever after quite often, marriage is not always like that. Marriage is beautiful, but it's messy and it's hard. Even in just the time that we've been married, we've had to sacrifice a lot for each other. I can't just think about myself anymore. I have to think about Ethan whenever I'm going to make a big decision. I have to think about our family and our future. And I'm motivated by so much more now than my own desires. Also, when you're married, you spend a lot of time together, so you have to get used to how the other person lives, because now they live with you. And the way you act affects them directly. And sometimes you can get really annoyed with each other. But instead of acting out and getting angry or frustrated with one another, you have to ask yourself, how can I love my spouse today? And sometimes you need to swallow your pride and be more understanding and more caring. I'm not saying that you shouldn't argue and disagree, because communication is really important in marriage, and you need to express your feelings and emotions to understand each other. But you need to do so in a productive manner. Yelling at each other is not a great way to do this, and it often can make things worse. But listening to each other and figuring out how you can help each other is really good. Understanding the needs of your spouse is key in marriage. It helps you bring out the best in each other rather than the worst. It's also important to note that while you may have disagreements or differences, it's really important to have unity in your marriage. When you're in public, you should be a unified front. You should be your spouse's first defender and biggest supporter. And one of the most important things in your relationship is to be an example of Christ's love to others. Go to Mass together. Serve your community together. Be each other's spiritual accountability partner. Let others see God's love in your marriage or in your relationship. Now, many of you one day will choose marriage as your vocation. But that's not your vocation right now. At this time, though, you can prepare yourself for your vocation. You can practice being a self-gift to others. How can you love the people around you? How can you help them? You could help with chores around the house without being asked and without complaint. You can be an ear to listen and a shoulder to lean on for a friend or a sibling that's going through a hard time. You can volunteer with a school group or with a community service project. See what sacrifices you can make for your loved ones in your community. Now, it's very important to note to have boundaries. Don't let other people use you. Don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable mentally or emotionally. If you have a friend that's always asking you for help, but they don't show up when you need help, that's not a good friendship. If you are being pressured to do something you don't want to do, and if you don't, then you don't love that person, then that's not healthy. Be okay with saying no, because love is a two-way street. If you have a relationship with someone, whether it's a friend, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or even a sibling or parent, that person needs to give of themselves to you as well to have a healthy relationship. Don't be a doormat or a pushover. Learn to stand your ground and stick up for yourself. And it's also important to practice chastity. This is part of being able to give your whole self to your spouse if you choose marriage as your vocation. It also will help with self-control, because marriage is not just about sex. Love in marriage is so much more than this, as I've already explained. And there are times that chastity is even practiced in marriage. But most importantly is having a Christ-centered marriage. Practice having a relationship with Jesus and making him the center of your life. If you are dating, make sure this is respected by that person. I can tell you it's a lot easier to have a relationship with someone when you share the similar values. If you can share Christ in your relationship, it's going to make your relationship stronger. Now, I want to point out that your forever is not decided yet. Many of you may not know what your vocation is going to be, and that's totally fine. It may change over the course of time. But what you do now will affect will affect your future. And you can still practice having healthy relationships, giving of yourself in a healthy manner, and having a life centered around God. And if you have already made mistakes along the way, that's also okay. It has not ruined your vocation. We have a very loving and understanding God who gives us the gift of confession. And we can always start over. We can always get back on the right track. Even in your vocation, you're going to mess up. Because we're human, we're not perfect. And we're going to fall sometimes. But God will always be there to help get us back on the right path. So I want you guys to pray about what your vocation is going to be and to now practice being a self-gift to those around you. Leo.